They're all the same.
Oh no, Diego is in the room again.
And using the
Okay. Hi everyone. Can someone maybe close the doors so that we have a bit less background noise? Thank you. So we are starting the second session for the NMRG meeting in IETF 120. So let me go through the note well first. So this is the note well that applies to the work we do in the context of the IETF. The IETF follows the IETF intellectual property rights disclosure rules. So please have a look at the slide, and the expectation is that you are familiar with the content of the slide, and if you need to have more information, to look also into the different pointers that are available here. Concerning the audio and video recording, so as for all meetings, the IETF routinely makes recordings of online and in-person meetings, including audio, video, and photograph, and publishes those recordings online. If you participate in person and choose not to wear a red do not photograph lanyard, then you consent to appear in such recordings, and if you speak at the microphone, appear on a panel, or carry out an official duty as a member of IETF leadership, then you consent to appearing in recordings of you at that time. If you participate online and turn on your camera or microphone, then you consent to appear in such recordings. Not well on the privacy and code of conduct. So as a participant or attendee to any IETF activity, you acknowledge that written audio and video and photographic records of meetings may be made public. Personal information that you provide to IETF will be handled in accordance to the privacy policy, and you can find the detail of this policy at the link. As a participant or attendee, you agree to work respectfully with other participants. You can also turn to the ombuds team if you have any question or concern about this code of conduct. And the details of the code of conduct and anti-harassment procedures are available in the following link that you can find on this slide. Now, a very important message. NMRG is Network Management Research Group. We are part of the IETF. So we feel it's important to always remind that the IETF conducts research work. It is not a standards development organization. The IETF focus on long-term research issues related to the internet, while the parallel organization, the IETF, focuses on shorter-term issues of engineering and standards making. The IETF can publish informational and experimental documents in the RFC series, but the primary goal of the research groups in the IETF is to promote the development of research collaboration and teamwork in exploring research issues related to internet protocols, application, architectures, and technology. You have also more information about the, scope and approach of the IETF in the following link. Some useful links. I think if you are in the room, you're already familiar with that. And for our, remote participants, this can also be useful for connecting via Miteco, accessing to the node. This is share notes. If you have inputs, you can also help us into taking minutes. And usually after a few days, the video recording of the session are available on the IETF YouTube channel. Agenda for today. So this is the introduction and presentation of the note well reminders. We will have a presentation by Benoit just after to give information about an upcoming workshop organized on behalf of the AIB. And we can have also a round of, Q&A on this announcement. Then we have a series of presentation related to the intent-based networking work, especially targeting the use cases. that will take, I will say, the middle of the session. And then at the end of the session, we spare some time to especially discuss the research agenda. As you know, for several meetings, several months now, we've been working to update the set of topics and the priorities that the group should work on in different areas. And we would like to spend a bit of time to discuss this together in this session and try to converge to an update of the research agenda very soon. Any question on the agenda? Okay, so we can proceed. Benoit, you're next.
All right, good afternoon. So this session is a session that was presented. Sorry, thank you. It's a session that was presented in the ops area agenda. And I was asked to repeat it here because there's a link with the NMRG. So it's about a new IB workshop on the next era of network management operations, NEMOPS. So there are multiple people involved, and I'm going to mention a couple of things about that. There is the NetMod chair, Matt and myself. There is Mahesh as Ops AD. There are IB members, and we've got Chin in the room with Wes and Suresh. So here is what's happening. If you know about this RFC 3535, it's about an IB network management workshop, which happened like in 2002. This document published the outcome of the workshop, which was a discussion between network operators and protocol designers, and to guide the IETF on what to do next. So if you look at the right-hand side there are a couple of requirements that were coming out of that. And if you read through them, you will understand that what we did in NetConf, what we did in NetMod, what we did about Yang, service models, all of this is an outcome of the problems that were highlighted 20 years ago. There are two aspects to this. There is requirement to document it, but also recommendation. So again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you look at some of them, this is why we had like an IESG statement on please don't do read-write MIP modules. They are too difficult to implement. This is the background. Now, as I mentioned, direct and indirect outcome of these RFC is NetCom working group, RESTConf protocol, CoreConf protocol, the entire set of Yang modules, whether it is at the network element level or at the service level, etc., etc. The telemetry we see now is also somehow linked to that. So the entire data modeling driven management shift that we've seen was already kind of not planned there, but at least the problems were highlighted. Now, I mentioned many people involved. The NMOP working group is a kind of new working group. We had a first meeting at the last IETF. There are 4 topics in there. The first 3 are kind of typical topic with the IETF. The last one highlighted in red here is consider and plan an approach for updating 3535 to produce a BIS, collecting updated operator requirements for IETF network management solutions. So that's why Mahesh asked us to create a kind of first workshop description. That's how we were involved. Now, let's go to what are the objectives of this workshop. First of all, this is to review the outcomes of what happened since 2002 and identify the operational barriers that you as operators you are facing in network management, but also limitations in terms of how do I implement those if I'm a vendor. Now, the next thing is to sketch new requirements, right? I have new requirements for future network management operations. Can we document this? And ideally for the IESG, develop a plan of action and recommendation. that would be good. So if you know about IAB workshop, typically you are invited to provide a paper that explains a little bit what you want to discuss about. Now, let me cover first the outreach there. It's a fact that we have less operators that we have now that we had at the time of the workshop, right? We still have some. Thank you for coming. It means that we might want to do some, and we will be doing some outreach to go to places where the operators are discussing. Which one are those? NANOC, RIPE in Europe, Autocon, Apricot in Asia. Because, you know, we've seen it too many times where we say to people, please come and discuss with us about your problems. Well, if you want to get the real feedback, sometimes you need to just go to the places where these operators are. And the next thing is that we tell them, you know, you should be writing like an IETF draft or a paper for the IB workshop. Sometimes it doesn't work. So for us, it's more important to just say, we're going to go where the people are and try to document what they want to tell us. Mahesh, for example, went in Autocon in Amsterdam. I plan to go to RIPE with one of the IAB members. Some other people will go to NANOC, right? Now we're going to have those outreach sessions to gather the requirements. There is a risk that you're going to say, you know, your IETF stuff sucks, right? But okay, it doesn't mean that we should not be doing like the collective effort to collect information and try to be better. So topics, well, could be tooling, open source, experiment, POC, information, data consistency, you know, to support richer observability. I see a lot of things, I see people nodding in the crowd, you know, data and knowledge, integration with business layer, automation, orchestration. So it's slightly more complex than 22 years ago, because at that point in time, it was mainly like config management. Maybe we now have bigger topics. So we'll see which feedback we will get. And the last slide is going to be announced soon. This slide isn't updated, but it's right now in the data tracker. So Chin, if you're online, if you want to share the link with the data tracker, what this workshop is, that would be good. You might be subscribing to this mailing list. And the workshop will be online at those days TVD in blue there. So this is what I wanted to say. Maybe one last point on why I'm here is because in the ops area we discussed like, what is the role of NMRG? And this is exactly one of the points that we need to clarify with 1 or 2 extra sentences. We had an IAB breakfast on Tuesday, I believe, and it was mentioned that we would like to welcome all the feedback and maybe going to triage, telling, you know, this is more for NMRG. If someone says, I want to do my AI ops with LLMs or something like that, as opposed to something more tactical. And this is what we want to explain as well in the description, because we have to admit that people outside the IETF don't make a big distinction between IRTF and IETF. That's why I like your slide, Laurent, reminding people what the IRTF is about. So did I cover all the points, Laurent, that you brought up in the ops area? Any more clarification? And Colin, if you want to add something, or Mahesh, feel free.
Yeah, thanks, Benoit. I mean, if any of, IAB, IRTF representatives want to chime in, that's the time. Maybe first, thanks, Benoit, for making the presentation, the heads up. Also, this is a call to the NMRG as the research group, but also the wider community, research community, network management. It's also part of this outreach. Go talk, I mean, you can provide inputs. Go also talk to your contacts, your operators, your researcher colleagues, fellows, to think about this, have this in your radar. And if you want to contribute, you can propose inputs to the workshop, but you can also participate and be in the debate. So this is also to, as Benoit was saying, to gather the requirements, the expression of what should be done. I think we have Chin first, and Colin, if you want to make a comment.
Thanks, Provide, to introduction. Actually, one thing is, for IAB, actually, we plan this workshop. The day track, we will move to the day trackers. Currently, haven't finalized. Probably will, make an announcement at the end of this week. And the workshop date already, finalized. It should be not a 2BD actually. And yes, so we have 3-day workshop, and actually we will have 3 sessions. Each day have 1 session, and each session will have 2 or 3 hours. And so this still will do the editing and to make this fixed. And yes, thank you.
And this is online.
Yes, it's an online meeting, not a physical meeting. The reason is we want to get a broad participation actually, because some of operator cannot make a trip to this kind of meeting. So virtual meeting will get more broad support and participation. Yeah.
Yeah, Colin, please.
Hi, Colin Perkins. Yeah, so I actually have very little to add. I think Benoit did a really good description of describing the goals of the workshop and how everything is being organized. I would encourage people from the research group and the research community to contribute, make sure that there's an understanding of what's suitable for near-term work and what's still research. I think that would be useful, but yeah, I think we've already had a great description, and I'm looking forward to the workshop.
Thanks.
Mahesh, the only other point that I wanted to add to what Benoit already mentioned in terms of outreach effort, as he said, he's covering RIPE, which is great. I'm going to cover AutoCon, and I believe Dhruv is covering Apricot. The slot for NANOG is still open. If you are somebody who regularly goes to NANOG, I would highly get in touch with me. I do have put a draft proposal into NANOG, but I haven't put a presenter's name in there. So if you are willing to go and be part of that outreach effort, do reach out to me and let me know. Thanks.
This is actually a very good point. Whenever we say we'll go there, it's not ownership, right? It's better to go with more people. In RIPE, we're going to go with more people and people who are connected to operators. So it's not like a 1-person effort per conference. So please help. Thank you.
Thanks, Benoit. Thanks, everyone. So please be, watching out for the announcement and the updates, and looking forward to your inputs on this upcoming workshop. So we move now to the next items for the agenda of today. So we switch to the IBN use cases presentation. Sharing. Green services en premier, c'est interconnecté. And Luis. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Luis from Telefonica. I will present this draft about intent for green services on behalf of my co-author, Guillermo. So the motivation is the increasing interest in different fora, clearly also in IETF, about the idea of incorporating the sustainable dimension to the provision of the services. So we attended yesterday, or most of us attended yesterday, the Green BOV, and was clear the interest as well from this community on that respect. So with the proposal of this intents, the idea would be to allow the customers to express their desired intents in terms of the green service objectives that they expect from the network provider, so that they can express in the form of different attributes what they expect in terms of energy consumption, or in terms even of CO2 footprint. This is relevant as well because somehow we can decouple both aspects. So, for the same level of energy consumption, we could have different impact on the CO2 depending on the sources that generate the energy that is being consumed. So the document by now primarily focuses on the structure and the attributes of the intent, and yeah, the idea is to keep working on that and refine both aspects, not the structure of the intent, but also the attributes that we were considering. So what kind of expectations are we describing in the draft? On one hand, the energy consumption. So this attribute or this expectation will refer to the overall consumed energy of the service. Then the energy efficiency, that will be basically will relate to the ratio of energy per a given unit of service. Here, the first example is in terms of unit of traffic. Okay. Then the carbon emissions that would be related to the CO2 footprint, so the grams of CO2 per kilowatt. And finally, the usage of renewable energy that could be expressed as a kind of rate, so maybe indicating that 20% or 30% of the expected consumption is expected to be using renewable energy. Let me say that the two first attributes are inspired on what the 3PP is defining for the slicing. They are defining the energy consumption and the energy efficiency in terms of slices. Here we are not talking of slices, but the communication services in general. But somehow the first two are inspired on that. And the other two are inspired on some quality indicators that the BEREC, which is the Board of Regulators in Europe, is identifying as indicators that the regulation authorities in Europe could consider or are considering to be collected and to be reported. These four attributes are not necessarily required at the same time. So a customer can either specify 1, 2, or 3, or even the 4. But not all of them could necessarily be specified at the same time. Regarding the life cycle, the intent life cycle, so the expectation would be in the fulfillment phase, sorry, that the customer specify or complement the request of the specification of the intent of the service with this green dimension. We can, in the framework of the project where we are developing this, we refer to this as the decarbonization level agreement. So we will have, on one hand, the service level agreement, the expectations in terms of SLOs and so, but also we will have these expectations in terms of green dimension, right? So this intent will be translated by the translation component, check against different policies, for instance, where to deploy in terms of geography, the service, and so on so far, or if we need to restrict the flows going for a given geographical area or whatever. So that would be the policies to be applied. And then the final step in the fulfillment phase will be the configuration of the network, so the actual provision and enforcing of the flows in the network. Regarding the assurance phase, the expectation would be from the network to provide a number of, to collect metrics and provide these metrics in order to be reported to the customer. Here we reference to the existing draft on green metrics in OXO. We have not yet done the mapping of these green metrics to the expectations that I mentioned before, but the idea would be to leverage on the existing work for sure. Then with that metrics, the provider could take some actions, what we call here internal closed loop. So maybe based on those metrics, take internal actions before reporting anything to the customer could be an option. And also, and even with these metrics being reported, it could be exposed to the customer. And here we are pointing out to the draft Petra Path Energy API that we will present later on today in PANERG, that essentially is an API for exposing let's say the allocation of, the allocation of energy to a given service in a path. And then finally, with this, the last step would be to report all the information to the customer, and with this information, the customer could even trigger any action for correcting the service or whatever if the expectations are not committed. So the next step for this draft will be to collect feedback from the research group. It's in version 00, so it's very new. So we would like to see if it's of interest for the research group. We expect to keep working on the implementation of the described intent. As I said, this is framed in a research project, SysGreen project. So we are doing some implementation on this, of the intents and so the structure. So yeah, we will report on the progress of this implementation. And yeah, we would like also to have a more clear link with the other drafts, the other efforts in general, not only these two, but the other efforts that are being done regarding the green dimension, so in such a way that we can start linking things and and see how things fit together. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Luis. We have time for questions, please.
Genchen from Huawei. So here I see from the implementation point of view, on the device level, there's some basic power consumption that's not directly related to the service load. So in this case, I guess we need to share this basic power consumption between different service.
Yeah, that's correct. And there are discussions on, there is a number of discussions in different mailing lists about how to allocate the proportional consumption for a given service. So the idea would be to keep working on that part, let's say in that front, how we can generate such kind of allocation, if it is meaningful or not, if it's proportional to the traffic or not, these kind of things. But the idea, would be to do proportional to what the customer is using. Yeah.
So another question is that do we have a specific hardware requirement to have better support for this service level power consumption evaluation?
I would say that at the level of the intent, you don't have any specific need. So so my first thought is that you don't require anything. So you could have even play this with existing legacy equipment. So then it's just a matter of reporting what is being used, not anything special, I guess. But I need to think more on that. But I think nothing special. Thank you.
Next, Arashmit, please.
Hi, Rashmit. So yeah, actually, I was sharing the same concern as the previous speaker. Like, you might actually need some updates into at least the software to separate the services from the resource allocation perspective, because we do that when we actually, let's say we go to the hardware to allocate some resources. So there might be some extra monitoring that we do. The question I have is that is this bounded to a single operator, or we are thinking about a service within multi-operator services as well? In other words, is this going to be recursed, like, iterative?
I would say that in a multi-operator scenario, you would require somehow to divide the intent. So, because at the end you are fulfilling the service at the very end in a single domain, and so I presume that would be required to divide the intent. In a multi-domain scenario, you will require to apply per domain, and somehow having a kind of overarching intent applying to all the different domains. For instance, let's think on the cloud service with some network support. So probably that intent should be divided for some part being solved by the cloud manager, let's say, or any other part, the rest of the part being solved by the SDN controller, and then putting all together for satisfying the intent.
Right. And then, okay, so let's say now compatibility of devices. So let's say, because we don't upgrade the network altogether, so there are going to be like gaps in between devices upgrades. Like what happens in between? What we do in terms of when the network eventually comes to the point that all the nodes basically have the required infrastructures to support the service.
I didn't get well the question. Sorry.
So if there is any requirement in terms of software upgrades, right? So we do not upgrade all the nodes at once. Right, so I'm assuming that we need to do some work in the nodes, or in just separate releases. So meanwhile, what happens is compatibility or backward, I don't know what you call it, but from a node that is sitting on a previous release that doesn't have this capability to the node that has this capability, we need to have some sort of plan to think how things progress from there, right?
We need to think on that, but I presume that will be in line with the allocation problem that we have discussed before, how to allocate the proportional value of the energy to a given service.
All right, thanks, Luca.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have maybe a couple of observations. So first, thanks for bringing new work to the research group. I think it will be important, as we stated, about the research approach, research goal of the group, to situate well what part of this work that you are starting, identifying research questions, the research aspect of the challenges with respect to intent or green aspect as part of this approach. And also, I mean, yesterday we had, I think, a very good BOF on green. I mean, there are a number of, let's say, things that the will-be working group expect to cover. So I think it's also important to situate maybe part of this work globally that would fit more into, okay, research aspect versus also some more implementation engineering aspect. I think it could even be a good synergy between the two, but making this separation could also be very relevant. Also, because you presented this as a use case, so there is currently in NMRG the IBN use case, let's say, thread. So also to situate well, maybe from a timeline or contribution, how you expect this use case to integrate with the other use cases. Yeah, and maybe, so that's for more, let's say, the positioning. Maybe just a remark now on the, more towards the green buff for this work, because if I remember correctly, yesterday there was this aspect of how are we going to organize the fact that we have now means to collect energy efficiency metrics, to means to optimize, and also means to control and manage. And I think this intent, let's say, mechanism could be something to propose to the green activities, or green buff activities, as maybe a means to achieve this kind of overall coordination or guidance for this aspect. Because I think it was an open point, but how we are going to do that as part of the more working group activities.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Thanks. I think you're next also with the next presentation. Oh, sorry, yeah. Alex.
Yes, hello. Yes, thank you, Lois. One question I have actually concerns the intents themselves. I looked briefly at your draft, and I think it would be useful to put some more interesting examples, I guess, of intent there. The way I see it right now, basically, the draft identifies a number of metrics, which of course, basically, the intent would be, okay, as an operator, you want to have them as good as possible, right? So basically, however, however, there's nothing concerning whether to say, well, what might be some of the trade-offs that you set with other operational goals? What are some exceptions under which you might be willing to compromise on one goal in order to achieve something else, and so forth? And I think basically getting some specific operator feedback or examples of such things would strengthen the draft and the intent behind this.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Yeah, it's a very good point. Yesterday, for instance, we discussed about the impact on the QoS and this kind of thing. So maybe something that we can elaborate more on and explore in the framework of this. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I will cover now an update of the interconnection intent on behalf of my co-authors. So just as a recap, the motivation for this draft was basically now we are, I mean, the communication services are, in terms of interconnection, are going beyond just the simply interchange of IP traffic. So there are now services that can justify not only the interchange of IP traffic, but also the usage of resources for other different domains or service functions, and so service function chains, and so on and so forth. So the idea would be to extend that notion of interconnection to something larger than just simply IP peering or IP transit. So as said, trading resources or trading functions even. So the objective of the draft is to leverage on IBM technologies for such enriched interconnection. And we originally described a number of scenarios. You can see there 2 lines in blue that would be the additions in this draft. So the original situations was, for sure, the interconnection of the simple interconnection, let's say, but also other cases like interconnection from non-public to public networks in the case of 5G, multi-domain network as a service request, or multi-domain network virtualization. That were the initial ones. We have added to this the provision of services in the edge cloud continuum. So how to deploy different workloads, maybe coming from Kubernetes or whatever other solution, and so that we not only signal the need of some volume of traffic, but also the need of resources, or if the workloads are already deployed, the need of accessing such a workload. In the case in which respect the modes of usage of the interconnection intent, again, would not be required to have all the capabilities at the same time. We can only stay with IP traffic interconnection, so the traditional peering, or we can go farther than that. For instance, thinking on services, maybe the interconnection of CDN caches could be a case. The virtual network function as a service could be another case. So, for instance, packet core capabilities in mobile virtual network operators. Also, signaling computing capabilities that could be required for deploying new services. And in the new edition will be the deployment of microservices in this cloud-native approach in the edge cloud continuum. Any combination of them, of all of them, would be also feasible. So updates from the latest version, we have extended the scenarios to include this edge cloud continuum. We have added a new example of the intent for delivering such composition of service functions in the edge cloud. I will go in the following slides. Also, we have added a reference to a draft and grow that is defining a peering API. That would be one of the, let's say, ways of activating. I mean, once we translate the intent being translated to this peering API, there is a new section that we have introduced about the lessons learned. So in such a way that we can report what we are finding as long as we are implementing these capabilities. And finally, we have a new co-author, Terzi Belivasaki from Synalexis, and also contributors to the draft. So going quick to the lessons learned. So basically, we realized we need to find proper ways of automating service deployment, and this will require the possibility of triggering actions not only in the network, but also in the cloud. So somehow some kind of adapters or interaction with cloud management systems, that could be Kubernetes, OpenStack, or whatever, could be required in that translation phase. Also, the need of having multiple adapters, because we will have different technologies underneath, both at cloud and network level. So the intent is somehow an abstract level, and we need to adapt to the different implementations that we can find underneath. That could be, in the case of a network, different controllers, or even implementing overlay solutions that somehow help us to skip the complexity of these multiple controllers. In the case of the cloud systems, the same story, so leveraging on the APIs of the different solutions, Kubernetes, OpenStack, and so. Because this is a particular scenario of interconnection, it's key to have some agreement on the semantics of the intents. At the end, it's a multi-stakeholder situation here, what we have from the service perspective. So all of them need to have the same understanding of what is expected from the intent. So the translation should be common, let's say, to the different operators involved in this interconnection, operators or cloud service providers. Next slide provide a very simplistic and initial example of this delivery of composite service functions at the edge cloud continuum. So essentially, the idea would be to, as expectation, to indicate a service function continuum in these different compute facilities across the network, and identifying both capabilities regarding the network, like bandwidth, latency, and so, but also capabilities in the cloud system, the virtual CPU, the virtual memory, and so on so far. Regarding bandwidth, latency, probably there is here a discussion. It should be a composed metric, including the delay in the cloud, plus the delay in the network. We need to go into those details and to figure out if it's necessary to go to further detail of that level of abstraction would be sufficient. So as next steps, we would like to discuss if the proper structure of the intents, if the structure of the intents is the proper one. Here there is a typo. We are referring that the structure that we are using, that is basically this kind of a structure, is the same that is being considered in ETSI and 3GPP. So there is a typo there. So we are wondering if that same kind of expressing the intents would be the appropriate for IETF. And maybe it could be a good discussion to understand what kind of, let's say, structure of intent we could adopt as a common language here in IETF. We would like to collect feedback on the approach followed, if it makes sense or not, and also see how we can integrate with the other use cases and these kind of things. And we will keep working on that. We are implementing as well this in some projects, so there will be some software available, some open source solution available sooner than later on these intents as well. In fact, we are already indicating a repo where you can find some implementation, so it will be available for the public usage. And that's all from us, I think.
Thank you, Luis. We have limited time for questions, if there are any feedback on the update of this work. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Luis. So let's move on to the next presentation. Paul, please.
Hello, this is Jung Porjang. I'm editor for use cases and practice for intent-based networking, co-editor Kehan Danyang, and co-author Chinu Chunyang Luis, and also other many contributors will be working on this draft. So basically, this draft is a starting point to make the consolidate all use cases draft from NMRG and also OPSA, WG, etc. So we want to make the positioning for this document in terms of NMRG intent-based networking, the RFC 9315 intent-based networking concept and definitions. So we made a summary of the practical learnings from the previous use case documents in terms of difficulties, challenges, and research directions. So we merged the IBN use cases. So why do we need the merging? Because there are many relevant documents still active in NMRG and also other groups like OPSA, WG. So some of them may have a similar idea, similar common foundation. Some have different approaches. So the goal is we try to make organized a system way and then condense the research value and the research direction for our intent-driven networking. So we made some progress after IETF 109. Also, we had the interim meeting last month, June 25th, with Jerome, our chair. So we discussed how to consolidate the use cases. So Jerome gave several comments. Our authors tried to address the comments. So we made the 00 and 01 version. So most of the comments from inter-meeting we believe addressed. So methodologies, and also we made a new section for learnings and the takeaway. Takeaway means some important key conclusion. So still we needed to polish up. So because we include several use case documents, but still do not, in terms of some depth or also tone, a little, we need to do some polish up. So this left-hand side, we have the table of content. So the main content is the introduction and the methodology for building IBM system. And the section 3 is IBM use cases, merging several IBM use cases. Also, so we included practical learning, also the research directions. So the methodologies for building IBM. So in order to IBM, we needed to know system awareness and the data collection. So we addressed the methodology tool, also metric and the granularity. Based on that, we can construct the IBM system. So we have, the 6 steps. So the first of all, operator or user make the intent. And then the intent should be translated into specific the policy in terms of network operation, in terms of applications. So we can use NLP or large language model. So we can generate. Typical thing is 3GPP. They have their own intent-driven managed services for mobile network. The specification number is 20. I remember 23.312, something like that. 28.312. So that intent, yes, a YAML model. Currently, my group investigate. So we can translate the specific some target policy like that. After that, we needed to deliver specific some controller imports that policy into network and application spaces. It is called the intended deployment. After that, we needed to verify through monitoring data. Okay, so we can use machine learning, AI, try to make sure. So verification or validation, we should make sure. Also, this one also the evaluated. So our optimization is good or not. So those are relevant use case document. Okay, so section 3 title is the IBM use cases. So we try to merge it. But Luis mentioned that during this work, some of use cases draft still ongoing. Try to make the specific details. So our authors and contributor, we are thinking certain use case draft can merge, but some of them developed, in parallel. So about the structure of section 3, I mentioned still the level of depth, also maturity is different. So we try to make some improvement next revision. And also the practical learning. So there are many challenges and questions. The first one is how to build the IBM system, especially a dynamic network environment like some resources, especially multi-domain, cross-domain scenario case. So, for example, subsystem function training case, we needed to figure out appropriate subsystem function in terms of some network status, also resource constraint. So how to make a subsystem function training dynamically. Also, how to provide the multi-domain environment. But also, we needed to constrain the IBM deployment, especially the IoT some scenario case, how to manage that kind of resource constraint. The future directions are we needed to make the generic the intent model for full life cycle assurance based on RFC 9315. And then autonomous end-to-end network policy generation, because end-to-end network case usually the multi-domain, multi-autonomous systems, right, involved. In that case, how to guarantee quality of experience for users, and also the user intent. The third one is the translation into policy, right? So in that case, usually some natural language or some web-based some template. That translate into specific some YAML or YANG model. Also, that model also eventually translated into low-level policy, right? So many of cases, the designer of data YANG model or YAML, different person. So in that case, we should use some LLM model. So this is very challenging because the accuracy of translation is very challenging. So in the past, my I2NSF case, we made a nice translator, but the high-level YANG model, low-level YANG model designed by myself, my group members. So we made a nice algorithm using Zhang Xiaoxia algorithm. So we prove a concept, but usually, high-level YANG over intent, low-level different, structure. So we cannot use just the algorithm approach. So we should LLM, but how to, verify translation is accurate or not, that is a very difficult problem. So next step is we want to polish up document in terms of the level or maturity of section 3, and then we enhance. Okay, so please give a comment today also mailing list. So we try to enhance this draft. Also, maybe the assumption call case maybe next IETF 121 Dublin. We want the authors try to call adoption. Also, this is a short appendix report. So hackathon project case. Oh, this one. Okay, okay, maybe skip. So you can just refer to slide. Okay.
Thank you. Let's
any
take
question?
maybe a bit of time to have some feedback on this aggregated document. First, thanks, Paul, for presenting on behalf of the authors.
Okay, please, speak of your
So thank you for the presentation and the effort you have made on the document. So maybe I'll first comment on your last question here about the adoption call. Our opinion as chair is we should not use adoption call as a speed, a mean to speed up the development, because in the criteria we need to have already some. We assume that the work should be enough mature. And as you said, you have now only a pile-up of use case in section 3. But I think it will be good first to refine the document and to clean up this.
Right. Yeah.
this part before we can proceed to further step.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but of course, thank you very much for this effort. And now I have a question also, or comment, more as a participant. So, and this also relates to this section 3, because now you say that you will work to have something more, let's say, coherent over all this section regarding all use case. And at some time you have this section about practice learning, which I think is it's a good thing to have. But my suggestion will be to extract from the different use case also the practice learning that you can then put there in this section, because now this section about practice learning, I would say is quite general. But what could be good is to have this in this section to show, for example, this problem is a difficult problem, but it was more difficult in this use case for this reason because of this property of this use case and so on. To understand as a reader, if I want to build an IPNet system for a different use case, which might be more similar to this one or this one, to understand which problem I should consider first as a main problem I should target.
Okay.
So just maybe to also, yes, in this practice learning, to do some like a kind of differentiation or learning in regard to the different use case.
Okay. So your meaning is current, practice learning to general try to address it individual use cases, try to apply what kind of practice learning.
Yes, I would try to see, for example, in this type of use case, this property makes this problem more difficult than in this use case.
Okay. Yeah. So we try to address some the use cases is that demanded some analysis, right? Okay. I see. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, do you want to try to adoption call early, or still we need to make more the mature? And so, what is your advice?
My advice is to wait for a more, let's say, mature input, as you plan to work quite well on the document still.
Okay, maybe next IETF meeting, right? Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Daniel. Yeah.
Hi, Daniel King. So obviously the chairs have kind of given their opinion on what to do next or working towards an adoption call. But I guess the first thing I wanted to make, or the first point I wanted to make, is that the mapping between intent and policy, sort of declarative to imperative, is really complicated. How you compile and how it gets applied. It's extremely subjective based on the IBM, so the intent-based sort of network scenario. So you might have multiple languages that you want to use in the network to actually apply that policy. Right. So it's rather subjective. And there are sort of at least 7 or 8 that I can think of immediately. What might be useful is having in the appendix some examples of how you use the security IBM. And you mentioned that you've developed an engine yourself, but I can provide some references for other engines and language models that can then be used to apply that policy in the network. And I think we've kind of answered the question about working group adoption, but I just want to state that at least for researchers, it's often much more valuable to tie research in terms of citations and referencing to a document that is enshrined in, say, the ILTF or the IETF. It's sometimes very difficult if it's still an individual draft to kind of justify its existence in a sort of a robust academic journal as part of a project. That was just an observation.
Okay, so Daniel, so let me clarify question. So do you suggest some appendix? Okay, so previous my security stuff or other academia, try to add to show specific, right?
Right,
okay,
exactly,
okay.
yeah. And I can give you some other examples. And then at least with an appendix, it's useful for the reader to see some implementations and some examples, and it can be removed if, assuming that it is adopted and then published at some point in the future. If the appendix is useful, it can be kept in. If not, it can just be removed and used elsewhere.
Okay, I see. So recently, I participated in, the NetSoft. Also, I was a TPC chair, intent-based networking workshop. So, several on a paper workshop and the main NetSoft, they talking about the intent-based networking translation, also how to construct the knowledge base. So definitely, I include the appendix. Okay, thank you, Dan. Okay. So, any more questions?
I just have an observation to what Dan was mentioning about a research group draft being, if I understood correctly, easier to use as a reference. So yeah, maybe this is probably a practice, but I like just to remind that it's not because a draft has a research group status that it's deterministic on the fate of this document. This document may well never be published as an RFC, maybe withdrawn, maybe changed to something else. So I understand the practicalities, but I think we should be quite clear also when we use a research group document as a reference that it's still a draft. So
yeah, so maybe as you know, right? So we have two references, normative and informative, right? So I think normative is usually RFC, and informal, reference is usually draft also. I think doable, right? So
say again, please.
So the RFC usually you have two kind of references, normative and informative. So informative case we can still include draft rather than the RFC. Also paper, academic paper, also in the past I've published P-Wave, RFC, the problem state use cases, we include many academic paper as informative. So,
okay, maybe
Do we
Daniel,
have time quickly?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, so just to follow on a couple of points that Laurent made there. First of all, if we reference in an appendix, what's nice about the appendix, it can be removed, or put a note that this section to be removed by before publication. Having a document that other papers and journals and projects can reference at the IETF or IRTF is really useful. And as a recent evaluator of JUSNS, there were a bunch of proposals, some of which were successful, so congratulations this morning if you got that email, that referenced the NDT concepts document, which is really good, right? I mean, it shows that the work that we're doing in this research group, for instance, is actually being cited and used in several other areas. So that's just the observation I wanted to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I mean, it's the practice. My comment was more on being cautious about the meaning of a individual draft versus a research group or working group draft versus an RFC and the status of an RFC. Not everybody makes a distinction, and sometimes if you see just that it's a draft format in the URL, people say, oh, it's a standardization endorsed work.
Absolutely.
These kind of subtleties, I think we should try to be careful, us, because we know a bit when we use it. But I agree with you. It's nice also that these things can be referenced, but we need to be cautious about the actual use of it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you
for the work. And now we are entering the, let's say, open discussion from the research group point of view. So we will give a brief status update about some, let's say, where we stand on documents and past actions. But the key topic will be the discussion on the research agenda. Okay. You want to take it? Okay. So we have one document that is currently under IRG review. So the draft on the green challenges and opportunities. This is, let's say, ongoing. We have we had some interim meetings in June with a focus on two aspects. One was what we just saw before, making progress and understanding the group approach to IBN use cases. I think this was quite useful, and thanks for the participant for this work and the preparation. And then we had also a part of the interim to discuss the green aspects of the research agenda. Jerome was driving also some questions towards the group about it, and we got some input and feedback. We will run a final call on the AI challenges draft. After the last IETF, there were some updates, so we wanted to make like a last check before entering IRG review to make sure that the group has consensus on the status of this document. We are also a bit anticipating on Dublin. I don't know if it's only me, but I saw a lot of good proposal ideas. People wants to move forward with a lot of things. So let's say we would like to a bit manage the expectation and say, okay, we have time until Dublin as a milestones to put things together. So it could be addressing some topics through interim meetings. Or consider also what we used to do some years to collocate maybe some discussion with research conferences. I think there is CNSM in October, which could be one of the milestone. And I think for some of the activities also in IRTF and IETF related to our topics, the hackathon could also be something to maybe entertain as an idea if some of the activity that people active in the research group may want to bring to an hackathon type of activity. I'm thinking about maybe some NDT implementation or IBN implementation. That could be also something to, let's say, discuss and to see how we can get organized if there are motivation to make it happen. We are also a bit, let's say, opening in advance calls for what kind of topics or what topics you would like to see addressed in the NMRG session as part of IETF 121. Usually we open a call for topics, but if people have also already some ideas to say, okay, this could be a group of interesting presentation on an emerging topic, the more time we have also to contact external people to participate, this is also very useful in terms of participation. And of course, open for suggestion in terms of how we are going to drive until Dublin in terms of preparation for the research group. So that's for the update. If you have any comments, come to the mic, please. Then moving on. So before we go for more the details, we are going to have, let's say, two parts of this discussion on the research group agenda. One is more about, I will say, the type of work, the type of outcome that the research group is producing, and the opinion of the group on that. And the second aspect is more related to the topics themselves, the actual technical questions that we want to address. So, I mean, if you've been following the group, we had already a few meetings back, a similar discussion about the types of contribution and outcomes. So for me, this is both a kind of a reminder, but also a kind of a question or a request to the group. We operate with draft and RFCs. I mean, we are part of IRTF and IETF, so this is really the tools that we are using or the medium we are using. And it's also very useful to use draft and RFCs to articulate and document the research group research. And this is also seen from outside, as I think Dan was mentioning, that the IDs are also on the data tracker. This can be seen from outside and usually used as references. Also, draft can also be a good vehicle to move some works towards IETF working group. I mean, the question on the green intent or some related aspect, this could also be, I mean, we have seen sometime work started as a draft in NMRG, then moved to a ops area, for instance, or to other groups. And I think this is also a good use of this medium. But what the important thing is that draft should not be the only target in terms of the form of what we use to discuss, to work in the research group. We can also think about more agile or less rigid methodology, because with into the draft, you have also some associated processes that makes it maybe sometimes a bit rigid to have maybe more discussion on the content, not on the form. So we can have maybe also more brainstorming sessions that could be organized as part of the research group activities and supported maybe with some extended abstract or maybe some technical deep dives. So different forms of inputs for a discussion, not only based on drafts, but also other facets like having practical work or implementation, proof of concept, coding to validate some of the ideas. I mean, we have a series of IBN use cases. Some of them are supported with proof of concept and implementation. So I think this is also quite interesting to, beyond having concept in the slides or formats, to also maybe come up with, this is a mechanism, this is an algorithm that can help to solve this problem. And we can report also more on the feasibility, on the progress in terms of state of the art, solving certain aspect of the problem that we are tackling. Then there is also technical presentation or workshop series. I will say a research group does not have to operate as a working group. We are not here to provide updates of a draft. I mean, it's good to, if there is important changes, but I think this is not the purpose. The hair time that we have, we can also try to dedicate that to go a bit more deeper into some of the questions that we want to address. It could be architectural question, it could be algorithm, it could be any kind of question, but I think we should also try to think more about the depth of what we want to discuss especially when we meet in the IETF meetings. So the next, let's say, part of this mention is to also be able to identify a bit earlier in the life cycle of what we do, the forms of how we want to support the work. Because, okay, it's good to have a draft as an initial capture of some of the ideas, but then I think we should try also to be a bit more plastic, a bit more free to say, okay, why not make it a publication? Why not gather some content on the wiki page or gather a repository for data set or for certain elements? Think about organizing a workshop on this question instead of entertaining a draft, or maybe have a webinar. So you see, think about different forms of how you want to conduct the discussion on a topic, how you want to progress the research, and not just fall back always by default to say, oh, let's write an internet draft. Okay, we want to have internet draft for the research group, that's for sure, but we should try to escape also that this the only medium that we have that we are using to convey our research outcome. Colin?
Hi, Colin Perkins. You said that a research group, I forget quite how you phrased it, that doesn't need to act like a working group. I think I would probably go further and say it shouldn't act like a working group. And I think I would probably say that to any of the research groups. The goal of an IETF working group is to progress documents and to produce documents and standards. The goal of a research group is to understand. And understanding doesn't necessarily result in documents. It may result in papers. It often does result in papers. It sometimes results in experimental RFCs and informational RFCs. But the fundamental goal of a research group is to improve understanding. And I think many research groups, because they co-locate with the IETF, fall into the habit of acting like IETF working groups, and working on documents and producing drafts and so on. And in some cases, that's appropriate. I mean, I'm not saying stop producing drafts. I mean, stop producing RFCs. Of course, there's sometimes a need for RFCs. But remember that the goal of the research group is to enhance understanding and not to develop documents. And that's something I say regularly to many research groups, not something that's specific to this group.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate it. And again, I think the comments are really, I mean, this is a discussion for the group and by the group. This is not just chairs or IETF chair talking. So it's more of a reflection, and we would like to the group also to endorse or to adhere to this way forward. We would like to run just a couple of questions in the tool to gather a bit, to situate, I will say, perception of the group on how we drive our activity, and if we're having, let's say, producing the right type of outcome. So Jérôme is going to run it. So.
Yeah. So yeah, just the first question is: do you think that NMRG produces or produced in the, let's say, last years the right type of results? So independently on the topics, okay, just not on the topics here we are talking about, just on the type of results, outcomes.
So please cast your vote. We would like also to kind of use this afterwards, you see, to reflect as chairs whether how we have to act on that coming back to the group, whether we see a specific trend or not, and we'll say kind of analyze this. This is, let's say, collecting feedback. So we give you, let's say, one more tens of seconds to go through that. Anyway, you can always come to the mailing list or to us if you have views on this. There will be another question following.
So yes, we just ran the next question, but as you for the poll, but as you can see here, that it's quite balanced between yes and no.
So for the people ready to talk, we will just run the second question first, get the answer, and then we will open a round of discussion.
For more open comments, yes. So the second question is, do you think the NMRG uses the right approaches to work on the topics?
You see, that's the reason why I carry my phone with me, so I can be cool.
Hmm? Okay, I think we can stop now the poll. So again, it's very balanced, so meaning that there's probably things that has to be changed, right? So now it's open for the question.
Okay, Dean.
Yes, hi. This is a research group. And in the management space, we are still talking about managing devices in an old management framework that hasn't changed for decades now. We are just reiterating the same framework and adding new flavors to that, but it's still the same framework. The service providers are running into a problem of how managing multiple networks. They know how to manage millions of devices within one network, maybe two networks, but they have no idea how to manage many networks as a managed service providers. The enterprises are more and more interested in an outcome and get a whole cost center infrastructure being provided as a service by someone. This can be different things, but in our case, it's a network. So the service providers are facing a challenge. They see it as an opportunity to increase their revenue, but they don't know how to manage many networks, in this case, that they would have to manage without adding significant amount of human resources in order to do that. That is an area that I haven't seen much conversation about that. So how to manage many networks is a problem in the industry, and people, it's a real business problem and there is a lot of opportunity there and not much there. And the second one is, if we want to continue using our existing management framework that has been going, we will have like a device management system, and there will be a network management system. We can rename them in many different ways, but it always comes to that. And unless we have a different approach to this, we won't be able to solve many of the real problems that are coming. Some of the proposals that are coming and being presented are something that has been already done in the industry by the startups and has been adopted. But what they did is they focused on a particular problem and solved it. For example, in IBN space, intent-based networking, there were 4 startups. One focused on a data center problems, and is quite successful with that. But they said that's a real world problem. And then from there on, they said, this is how we will be solving it. So network management as a general framework, I think it's inadequate for going forward, especially for the problems that the network operators are seeing, going forward.
Thank you, Dean. We capture that.
Daniel King. So it's regarding the first question that you asked, and another way to phrase that is, has the research group been successful, and how do we measure success? I thought I answered yes. I thought that the research group has actually published and sort of provided valuable output. And one example of that was the document that I talked about earlier, the NDT concepts, because I'm seeing it referenced not just in academic journals, but also as part of funding processes and how it's going to use that document and build on it. And we can see actually that one of the outputs or activities of the research group that kind of Colin identified is that we are able to seed ideas and new work and even new working groups in the IETF. So for me, that's sort of measurable success. And the NMRG has achieved that, because now there's a whole host of digital map, digital twin activity that's happening. However, it hasn't, nothing's perfect. And maybe it's actually the structure of the IRTF itself, not any individual research group. One observation I would make is that sometimes the NMRG becomes a gravity well for topics that might actually be discussed or should be discussed in other areas. So that's maybe diluted a little bit of the discussion and the time of the research group as well. Thank you.
Maybe Dan, any idea or to, let's say, organize this gravity well?
Faster than light travel? I don't know. How to escape the gravity well is very difficult. No, it's a hard problem. Got no solution.
Yeah. Diego?
So, well, I'm not sure if we can escape from the Dan's well, but something that could help as well, something that I hear once and again is about the difficulties in attracting academic researchers to these kind of groups. And I was wondering, thinking about the means, I was wondering whether we could try to find a way of collaborating somehow. I mean, formally collaborating the NMRGs with some journal or events, so we could try to organize special issues or special sessions in conferences and connect this with our drafts, or even trying to fine-tune a little bit more the procedures, require drafts to be published inside the NMRG or inside the general research group to be connected with publications at the same time. Because I believe that one of the problems is that activity here for the canonical researchers is not so appealing, because it doesn't have a reflection in their academic records. And if we can find a way in which we could collaborate with publishers or organizers, etc., I guess, and should not be difficult. I mean, or well, should not be difficult, because I mean, somebody would be taking care of it. But this kind of collaboration probably could be beneficial, or at least as a way to explore.
Okay, thanks, Diego. Maybe just a quick, let's say, information on this point. I mean, we are doing that. Maybe the question is, maybe we are not doing that enough or with enough visibility, because we had in the recent history several workshops on the topic of NMRG that have been organized in different research communities. We have been also inviting special issues. We had some outreach. Probably this is, maybe we could do more or bring to the right visibility or to the right communities.
Or trying that the NMRG acronym is better seen. That's probably is that.
Yeah, so that may be a question to Colin, because at least for me, NMRG is a group. It has an existence, but even us as chairs, we are just, I mean, servant of the group, and usually it's the individuals that do the activity. So you see, on behalf of NMRG, it's a bit sometimes challenging to. I mean, there is no way to NMRG as a group outside. It's the individual actually. So and we try to also to be careful not to confuse that, because we can, for instance, we can present what NMRG is into a conference or in a university, but we cannot act on behalf of the group to say this is what the group thinks or what. So it's also a bit of a challenge. Okay, we have Nacho, and then okay, we try to maybe also we have also a view on the topics. So we have like 10 minutes left. So please, Nacho is in the queue. Then we have Colin. We will present the slide on the topic, and we can maybe come back if we have time to some discussion on the mic.
Hi, Nacho from Telefonica. Just a comment on the approach for contributing. I think what we are missing here is, in my opinion, experimentation. This is a research group, and I know this is IETF, and the tendency is to work on RFCs and drafts, but I think we are missing here experimentation. In IETF, the place so far it's the hackathon. I don't know if this working group could focus on the hackathon for as another way for contributing, or even, I don't know, use the NMRG slot itself to share the same contributions that are shared in hackathon as of today. It's just a proposal, no? To be more active on experimentation from the working group.
Yeah, Colin, please.
Hi, Colin Perkins. I think when you're talking to groups outside the IETF and IRTF, I don't think there is so much of a concern about going as, for example, the NMRG chair and saying, this is what NMRG thinks. Because it's not a standards activity where the goal is to have an opinion and produce a single way of doing something. You're going as representatives of the group to say, we have this venue. If you're doing research, this venue might be a helpful place for you to connect to people in the standards community and connect to the broader industry, and try and help ground your research in the needs of the operators and the standards developers, and help as a researcher you to understand what problems that community has. So don't think of it as you need to go and evangelicize, it's been a long week, the views of what this group is thinking. Go and say, this is a venue where you can come and connect. And again, don't expect people from the research community to come in and bring drafts, because that's not the value proposition. The value proposition is making connections and learning from this community, from things which they can't get from going to an academic conference. They have the opportunity to bring their ideas in and get them socialized in a space which is very close to the standards area, and they get the ability to learn from people who are running networks and who are developing standards in a way that often doesn't happen in a very academic conference. So lean into the value proposition. Don't expect the academics to come and write drafts, but expect them to learn from the process.
Thank you, Colin. So let's take maybe a few minutes to go on the content topics. Like Jerome, you want to say words?
No, you want Sure. So regarding the research agenda, so as has been said by Laurent, we have been through different, let's say, iteration over meetings. I mean, at the IETF and during interim meetings on different topics that I recall here. So we have been talking about artificial intelligence, digital twin, green networking, IBM. So here, why we put question mark, just also open question to see if you still think that they are topics that are relevant for the group, and of course others if you think there are other topic relevant for the group. so you will have the opportunity to, of course, express your opinion now, or if you have time, on the mailing list. And of course, as we already done this before, and you might have seen on mailing list or participated, we have this kind of draft document where we put these different topics. I try to already establish some, let's say, work items or directions that could be interesting. So what we will do with Laurent is a bit clean up this document, because there are a lot of ID. Try to have a kind of list of bullet points of work item, and the idea then will be to have to collect your feedback on these different, let's say, research question and work item, and also to have to know the priority, because of course there are many interesting topics, but we have also to know what could be for you the main priority you would like the group will address and you would like to contribute to, because probably you may have opinion about interesting topics, but maybe if nobody is willing to, has no maybe time to contribute, it's not it might not be good to present it. Yeah, if you can. So I think I will skip. We had some slide on the survey and with networking. Maybe you can directly go to the last. Last slide. So as you may have seen on mailing list, we share with you a survey on the green networking topic in NMRG, because we had a lot of discussion with individually with people, and we try to put all together the ideas that people have shared with us, and to see if we can reach a consensus of the different ideas. So I would say I will share anyways the result on mailing list, more detailed result about this survey, but in general, what we see is that we have a kind of consensus of the general topic, I would say, regarding environmental impact or aspect of what NMRG could work on. Of course, adjustments still need to be done, and of course, as you know, there was this green buff yesterday with possible future working group on this topic. So it's very important that we separate things between IETF and IETF again here. I think this is kind of a message that we want also to convey as well here. So for this, I'm fine. Okay, maybe it's for the last minutes. Maybe some views from the chairs and recommendation. Again, we need to have clear priorities. Of course, we still want to let's say welcome new topics, but the idea of what we will do on this reshuttering phase will be to have clear priorities over the different topics. We want also to increase the research focus. Again, you already said that, but we want to avoid, let's say, working group-like presentation, only updates of drafts, maybe more deeper analysis and contribution, more research paper-like presentation. This is what we would like to recommend. And yes, we would like to have also other types of outcomes and improve in general the quality of the research outcome and outcomes. We already discussed that, so I will not enter in the detail, but drafts and RFC should not be the only target. I think in our question, you probably feel that we always ask what is a research question, because sometimes we lack really what's the research question. It's going directly to our, let's say, engineering consideration. That should not be the scope of the group, of any research group. One important point, because we talk about, let's say, outreach activities and attracting people, we have been in the past inviting people, or people sometimes join, newcomers join the meeting to present. And yeah, most of the time for them, it's hard to have kind of follow-up activities, because I think we are not enough maybe interacting, I would say, with them. As you say, they need to learn also something first. It's just not that they come here. And I think it's also related to the comment of Corinne. They need to learn something. They need to have also feedback from us. And so I think, or we think, I would say, in many cases, when new people comes, because maybe they are not, let's say, used to the type of format, to the type of meeting, they are not presented as we maybe are used to, and so they don't have enough feedback. And so it does not allow to really, let's say, having new participants into the group. And I think this last one, right? Yeah, but in end of time.
So yeah, we reached the end of the allocated session time. So as Jerome was mentioning, we have, I mean, we would like to direct you to, I mean, it's not on this one. Yeah, so we have a draft of an updated research agenda. You can provide your comments. We also send an email to the mailing list, so please react to that if you have specific position on priorities, areas in the different domains. We heard also today, I mean, additional areas or suggestions to cover in parts of activities of the group. So this will be also important to capture. We would like to, let's say, finalize a bit these updates of the research agenda, especially organized around the research questions, to also allow us, I will say, to move on with that and concentrate on the different areas. So, and I encourage you to share your views, especially text. And so thanks for your participation and see you around. We are here until the end of the week and looking forward to meet you in Dublin, if not before. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Manquer de temps. En fait, on commençait à parler sur les topics.